All right, we'll call the Bruce County Housing Corporation meeting to order. And again, ask if anyone has a declaration of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we'll just move on to the action items. There's the approval of the minutes from January the 7th. They have been attached. I need a motion to approve. Mike and Milt, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Action item, fourth quarter arrears.
So I have before you the fourth quarter arrears report for your information. I will highlight that at the end of 2015 that our total arrears were considerably higher than they have been in previous years. And it really represents the average cost per tenant has increased considerably. Staff, of course, are taking all due diligence to collect those arrears, and there are payment plans in place with a number of the current tenants with outstanding arrears. And of course, we continue to work on collecting those while they're still tenants, because it's much easier. And even once they become former tenants, we do have the ability to continue to work with them to collect the arrears. So just wanted to make you aware of where we were at regarding that, and that all efforts are being made to continue with collections. And overall, our total percentage of arrears against our revenues are still well within best practice ranges for housing properties. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yep.
Sure. That total number of tenants, is that unusually high, Christine, or is that, when you look at the amount per tenant that represents, it's...
So part of, a small part of the increase is attributable to us taking on the additional 45 units at Port Elgin Rotary, but it's not significant. So their arrears were no higher in ratio than ours were, but that does contribute to the overall number of tenants. The number of tenants is not significantly different, but the average amount that they each owe did see a significant increase. So on average, last year it was $237 per tenant that they owed, compared to $344 this year.
It seems like a low number still for each tenant, but yeah. All right, thank you.
Yes, Robert?
I was just wondering, like in the winter months, when people get in arrears, like you can't evict them, right? You got to wait till the spring, so then that would kind of affect this quite a bit too?
The eviction process that happens through the landlord-tenant board is not dependent on the time of year. So evictions can happen at any time of year. Staff make every effort, though, to avoid evictions. And some of what we're seeing with the high levels of arrears that we're carrying is because, given the change in the perspective around how we manage housing sustainability overall, that changed with us taking on the Housing Stability Fund. And so we have longer term payment plans with smaller amounts being paid that are more sustainable for the tenants to make, but it does result in the corporation holding higher amounts of arrears for longer periods of time.
Any other questions? Yes, Jay?
So just to clarify that, it's not that people aren't paying, it's that our arrears are at a higher value, but they only have to pay a lower value each month. So instead of paying it off in 10 years, it's 20 years.
Yes, and sometimes that's what it looks like. The regulations suggest that at a minimum, we would collect 10% of what they currently pay in rent. So if you're paying a rent geared to income rent of $115, theoretically, you could pay back at $11.50 a month, right? So the tenant coordinators work with the tenants to try to come up with a plan that's sustainable. So if they can pay $50 a month, or if they can pay $100 a month, they're coming up with something that allows them to continue to pay their regular rent, so they're not at risk of eviction, and the repayment term is longer.
So on that, the upfront negotiations when we sign a lease with somebody, can we change that, or we're restricted to what the province is saying we can do? Do you understand my question?
So that is not included as part of the terms of the lease. There are terms in the lease that suggest if there's damages that we can charge them for those damages. Where the minimum payment comes from is in the regulation. And so that 10% is included in the regulation. And of course, we are working within two pieces of legislation, the Residential Tenancy Act, and then we have some exemptions under that, where then we're working with the Housing Services Act. And so we're trying to work within those two pieces of legislation best we can, negotiate something that's workable for the Housing Corporation, as well as considering the needs of the tenants that we're working with.
All right. That was for information. That brings us to the end. Next meeting is March the 3rd, and I need a motion to adjourn. Milt and Robert, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.